What's going on, guys? Brent31. Appreciate everybody tuning in. So this is live stream 28, and the question of the hour is going to be, is America in decline? And I've got a little panel associated here. I'm going to go around the horn. I got our typical guests tonight, but starting off, we got Les with Pegasus Tests. Pegasus Tests is his YouTube name. Be sure to check out his channel, guys. It's fantastic. Reviews gear, very similar to my own. So if you like my stuff, you'll definitely like him. Les served in the United States Marine Corps in the early 90s. Veteran, Gulf War. And a good friend of mine. He's a black hat instructor and newly appointed commanding officer of Bravo Company in West Virginia, One Shepherd. So be sure to check out his stuff. Les, thanks for joining us tonight, brother.
Happy to be here, Brent.
All right, next, got my good buddy Chad. Chad and I served together in Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines, served together in Afghanistan in the 2011-2012 timeframe. Chad is a veteran of 2003 Iraq invasion, went back in 2004 to hook and jab in the Battle of Fallujah. He's a warfighter, good buddy of mine, studying to get his doctorate in military history, and always brings a awesome, educated perspective to the chat. Chad, thanks for joining us tonight, brother.
Appreciate you having me.
All right, next I got my good buddy Bruce Camp Armament. He's like my right-hand man. He is a very big contributing factor. You guys probably seen him. He strikes a stunning resemblance of William Dafoe in Platoon, if you guys haven't seen that. But Bruce is a former aircraft mechanic. He's a armorer. He's done a lot of Cerakote work with firearms, and he's got some great stuff. You check out his Instagram handle, Bruce at Camp Armament. You can see some of his works there. He also has his own YouTube channel called Bruce at Camp Armament. So be sure to check him out. Bruce pretty much brings the civilian perspective to the group. So, Bruce, thanks for joining us tonight, man. All right, next we got arch nemesis Michael. Michael served in the United States Marine Corps. He deployed to Iraq. He's a friend of mine. He was a coworker of mine as soon as I left active duty in those early years back in the day. So, again, bring him on for that different point of view, because a lot of times we agree too much. So we need to get some mix up in here. Definitely got a lively conversation last stream, if you guys haven't seen that. And I highly anticipate he's going to be throwing some fireworks this time as well. So, Michael, thanks for jumping on tonight, man.
Thank you, Brent. Pogue for life.
All right, last but not least, we got the good doc, Dr. Christopher Larson. He's the original founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, going 40 years strong. He's a veteran of the United States Army. He was NCO. He served in Korea on the 38th parallel, getting ready to hook and jab with North Koreans. And Doc has written many books on small unit tactics. He's a wealth of knowledge. Always, Doc, it's a pleasure having you on tonight. All right, and that is our panel, guys. I do possibly anticipate 2 more jumping on, maybe. If they come in, I'll introduce them at that time. But again, the topic of the night is America in decline? There's a lot of aspects to look at this. We could talk economically. We could talk militarily. We could just talk the nation as a whole. So I want to kick it over Pegasus Test. He can start us off. Go ahead, man. You got the con.
Roger that. All right. Well, I'm going to refer back a little bit in history. As I was growing up, coming out of the Carter years into the Reagan years, everybody was saying the exact same thing. And Charlie Daniels came out with a song called In America. Look it up when you get a chance. But it's basically, the gist of the song was that, yeah, we're a little down, but we're not out. We'll come back. We always do. We're like he says in the song, we have stumbled, but we've never failed. You know, it's not perfect right now, but we could always be better. You can pick any time in the history of this great nation, and you could say, we're going to be better than we are. And we always do. We've had rough patches for sure. Worst one being the Civil War, definitely a rough patch if there ever was one. But we came out of it better as a nation. We went through the Great Depression, came out of it better as a nation. Are we in a rough patch now? Yeah. We doing some stupid shit now? Yeah. But you know what? We'll pull it out. I have faith in this country. We always will.
So is America in decline? I say, of course it is. What we are seeing right now is a direct result of establishing a free society that meets virtually all of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The issue of social justice is a first world problem promoted by the middle and upper classes, mainly white liberals who come from privileged families or have achieved success, feel guilty about it, and don't have any causes to fight for. So they make up bullshit causes to go fight for. Do you think third world countries give a damn about things like social justice? No. They just want to put food on the table, get an education, and live safely. You know, the things that really matter. When we have nothing worth fighting for, like our very existence, then we start fighting over bullshit. There's a reason the greatest generation came from the Great Depression and World War II. They had large scale struggles. We don't, generally speaking. I'm not saying there aren't individuals that struggle, but communally, we don't struggle. Community struggles stopped for us after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now we have it so good, men are declaring themselves women. We're worried about personal pronouns. These so-called woke people who have been coddled so much and have grown into narcissistic leeches. We have it so good. Mental illness is on the rise, which makes no sense. So we're obviously doing something wrong. What is killing America? The answer is Marxism. Today, we see a new type of Marxism, and at the forefront is what Dr. James Lindsay calls race Marxism. This has distinguished itself as critical race theory, which has become a hot topic today, especially for those of you in Virginia. Essentially, after the failure of classic Marxism, also called vulgar Marxism in academia, neo-Marxists and postmodernists focused on race instead of class to divide society and start a revolution. According to critical race theory, an introduction by Richard Delgado and Gene Stefanchik, which is a textbook, a college-level textbook for CRT, unlike traditional civil rights, which embraces incrementalism and step-by-step progress, CRT questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality, theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional law. Lindsay has another definition, a more appropriate definition. He defines CRT as calling everything racist you want to control until it's fully under your control. The problem with this tactic, aside from its totalitarian tendency, is that it focuses or attempts to focus its enemies, in this case white people, into a collective consciousness. Most whites, especially conservatives and libertarians, do not subscribe to collectivism, nor do we think racially in a collective manner. Eventually, this may take hold. So how is this not dangerous? Don't you think that eventually, when whites are told over and over they're racist, that eventually they'll say, okay, maybe I am, so let's run with it? There will be a reactionary movement to this crap, and it won't be pretty, nor will it be liberal in nature. It will be equally totalitarian as wokeism. This is why wokeism must be stopped by any and all means necessary.
Well, Chad, surprisingly, I think you and I agree on very much what we're going to talk about tonight. Maybe not exactly, but pretty close. I want to say that I believe that there is always room for improvement in this country, much like Les said, and we can get there. But Chad has touched on a lot of things that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that is that we, the majority, the sane, normal majority, allow all of this to happen. Everything is going to be everything that happens in this country happens because the majority of people allow it to happen. We have nobody to blame but ourselves. Now, I agree with Chad. We've seen this happen in countries before, time and time again, and eventually, it all blows up, and the average people revolt, and it's never, ever pretty. I'm talking about ditches being filled with bodies. That's what ends up happening in the end. The system will reset itself. And the longer it takes to reset itself, the worse it's going to be. So I'm going to tell you guys that I got a lot to talk about tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's opinions. I'm going to take a little different approach than probably most of the guys, or maybe you would expect me to, because I'm going to point out some ways in which maybe we aren't in decline and we are rather very much in incline, and talk about those things, point those out to you, because I don't want to be just sort of the same old person just referring to the same old thing over and over again within the panel. I think we'll give some differences of views here. I'm an open-minded person, and I can see this thing from a couple of different ways. Sort of comes down to the question that Brent asked. Is America in decline? Well, by what barometer are we measuring decline? That's going to vary on my answer and my position.
All right. I am excited about hearing everyone's different points. and look forward to the discussion. I'm going to go with, what Les's sentiment was, and that is that, hey, we've been through some dark times in America before, and we've always managed a way to get through it. So, I try to keep an optimistic point of view and approach on everything. So, with that being said, let's get into it.
Yeah, let me introduce the term marginal loss of return. So the marginal loss of return is when, I don't know, you're playing the slot machines in Vegas, you go in with $200, you're up at 800, but you've calculated you should be at 2,400 at that point. So are you improving or are you losing? When you want and think and plot and calculate to be at $2,400 off of your $200 and you're only $800 up, well, there is that perspective. So it's a marginal loss of return. So we tend to do this. We tend to do this over the course of any one of our lives, right? We see something, we say, wow, this has got a certain amount of value to it. And over time, our opinion of that value diminishes or it changes. Now, it can go up, that's the good news, or it can go down, or it can stay stagnant. But that's one thing I do want to talk to you about. And then the other thing is perspective. This is what I'm trying to say is it's perspective. But there's another perspective outside of your individual or even outside of your community. At the end of World War II, Truman starts what we call colloquially the Truman Doctrine. And the Truman Doctrine said this. He said, man, we really messed up, as a world, as a collective, globally, we messed up at the end of World War I because we tried to punish everybody we're angry at. Well, how about we rebuild them? We rebuild them into something that's agreeable and make them strong neighbors and make them strong, customers, and make them strong partners. And so I would argue that America has, by many rights and by just about every metric we can measure, has grown in leaps and bounds in the 70, 75 years since then. And so growth is growth is growth. So you say, are we in decline? How can you be declining? You're growing. But when you look around the world and you see that they're growing faster than us, well, that can be intimidating. And you can pat yourself on the back and sprain your elbow doing it, going, oh, look at us. We help the rest of the world. Aren't we great people? Sure, maybe some of that's deserved. But the fact is, if you're trying to always do what's called a side-by-side adverse comparison, yeah, that's another term. It means, well, I'm going to compare myself to Germany. And when I was a kid, we were so much better than Germany. And when I was a kid, we were so much better than South Korea, economically or politically or whatever it was. But they've really gotten their act together in the last 20 years. And now comparatively, we don't look as good. So are we in decline? Sure. Are we actually in an incline? Yeah, it's about perspective. And so I imagine we're going to discuss that at some length this evening.
All right, so my 2 cents. And let me preface this by saying that there's a tornado nearby. So if all of a sudden I just disappear, you guys know what happened to me. Or possible tornado, I should say. So you picked this topic tonight because I wanted it to be a lively discussion. There's obviously many factors that we can take into consideration. I by no means am an expert on any of these. The only thing I can really speak intelligently on is probably the military aspect. Are we a great nation? I believe so. I believe we are the greatest of nations. We are one of the only nations in the world where literally you have thousands, if not millions of people trying to literally come to this country to live, to start a new life. What other nation in the world is experiencing that? So in that sense, yes, we are still great. However, I think we've achieved success to that saying where, hard times make strong men, and then strong men make good times, and then good times make weak men. And I think we're at that point where we've made weak men. And that is definitely going to take its toll on the country. And, there's so many things that can be cited. I think one of the things that really sticks out to me is some of the stuff Chad hit on with the race stuff. I also saw a poll where they were talking about Americans defending the nation and, if they would defend the nation, and it was divided up by political and politics and things like that. And you had a significant portion of those on the left that said they would not defend the United States and cited that America is a racist nation and not worth defending. That really bothers me. And, you can cast aside polls at times, but then we look back to, the George Floyd riots and stuff that took place a couple years ago. And we've seen, the dismantling of what were our, heroes leading up to all this. And they still are heroes. They should be held as such. But you have people like George Washington are being written off because they were slave owners back in the day. And that stuff really bothers me. And I think it leads down a path of no return. So with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And I definitely do hear some sirens outside. So hopefully I don't get blown away here.
Well, I think decline is a perception issue for people. And I think if you talk to people, a swath of people, and said, when was America great? When was America in decline? You get 100 different answers. It reminds me once of a poll done in the Military Times when I was on active duty, where each of the services were to rate the best and the worst duty station. And the Marine Corps answer was hilarious because the best duty station was K-Bay, Hawaii, followed by Camp Pendleton, followed by Camp Lejeune. And the worst was 29 Palms, Camp Pendleton, and Camp Lejeune. It all comes down to nobody's going to agree where America's at its best and at its worst. So will things get bad? Yeah. Will things get better? Yeah. Think about it. Not too long ago on this very live stream, we talked about the possibility of American Civil War. And I was the guy going, it's already started. Okay. Things are going to get bad. And they're going to, when it comes out the other side, we're going to be better for it. We became a great power after our Civil War, but it was hell on the nation. As far as I can tell from history, Doc, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong here. On the North American continent, the bloodiest war ever fought was the American Civil War. Literally 10% of the population was wiped out. In America, we do everything the best. We make everybody else look like amateurs, including genocide. Do I want to see a civil war? Hell no. No, I do not. At the same time, I think that we're smart enough to pull ourselves out of it. Before the start of the Second World War, there were neo-Nazi groups in America that had power, held big rallies in Madison Square Garden. You know what? Those guys didn't win. There was a time when the Klan was very powerful in the South. Now, you'd have to search real hard to find a Klansman. I think David Duke's the only one left. We got past that too. We got past the economic decline of the 1970s. We survived Jimmy Carter giving away the Panama Canal and being weak to the Soviets and all that. And we're still here. We will survive what's going on now because the American people always reset themselves. Look at our elections in our lifetime, guys. We went from Carter to Reagan, then we went to Clinton, then we went to Bush, then we went to Obama. You see the cycle. We swing back and forth on a pendulum, but in the end, it all evens out. Yeah, we'll have some rough times. Maybe this generation was the George Floyd riots, much like the 1960s had all the anti-war riots. But we will be better because when it comes down to it, I have faith in the American people. We will pull it out.
It's a good point, Les. And that's much along the way of what I'm thinking. For those of you, I see some comments here that, things are worse now than they were 20 years ago. Listen, every generation says that. It's been that way for nearly forever. And I know I've got personal stories just about my family. Think about the punishments that my grandfather inflicted on my great grandfather inflicted on my grandfather. Beat the skin off his back with a horsewhip because he picked the wrong row of cotton one time, and the daughter who actually did it was too little to beat. Then my dad thought his beatings were the worst ever because he got beat, but that was nothing compared to what my grandfather went through. And I thought my beatings were bad when I had switch and belt licks across my legs and went to school being called zebra legs, but that was nothing compared to what my dad had. And I guarantee you, if you talk to my daughter, she thinks that I'm just the most tyrant father that's ever walked the earth, but she's experienced nothing like I experienced. Now that's on a personal level, guys, but that mimics what's going on in the world. Think about this. The comment was just made, gas prices. Oh, I know the world's in decline because we're at $5 and something gasoline. Yeah, that sucks. But you know what? You can still get gasoline. Under Carter, you couldn't. Under Carter, it was rationed and you were in a long car line just trying to get gas, if you could even get it. So things have been worse before. So I'm not as concerned as maybe some of you are. Now, those of you that don't really pay attention to history on the long run, okay, maybe you don't know, but that's what I'm here for, is to kind of explain this to you a little bit. Look at our vets. We got vets that were in combat that just think things were absolutely terrible for them. And for some of them, there were. Many lost their lives, but they weren't as bad as they were in Vietnam. And I'm going to tell you what, World War II vets didn't like Vietnam vets. They didn't even think Vietnam vets were fighting a real war, because Vietnam vets weren't sitting out there having to sit in a foxhole and take artillery strikes. And I'm going to tell you what, World War I Vietnam vets had it worse. We have PTSD now. We don't have shell shock. And let's not confuse the two. If you've ever seen footage of soldiers from World War I of shell shock, that's not PTSD. They have a nervous system breakdown. They can't control how they walk. They can't control sometimes how their arms move, their body functions. The concussion going off around them was so bad, it literally messed up their nervous system. You don't have that so much today with the veterans that we have. They absolutely have their problems, but I don't think there's any veteran in World War I that wouldn't gladly swap places with the guy that's fought in the last 30 years, because he would think that those guys had a cakewalk. Even though we know he had it bad, it was nothing like undergoing relentless artillery day after day. And the best thing you had to look for was hoping that a shell would hit you and blow you apart and you wouldn't feel it, and you wouldn't survive it. So things have always been worse. Civil War is a great example too. I don't know if there's been anything in this country worse than that, and we're really nowhere near that, I guess, until we are. But the injuries, what we sustained there, the only thing that saved us from that was the lack of knowing and the lack of information. If everybody had a 4K cell phone during the Civil War, I believe it lasted about 3 days. Then everybody would have said, to hell with this. We're not going to do this anymore. This is brutal. This is ugly. We don't want to do it. So I think, again, that you have to look at things in perspective. Yes, things are bad now. And we as Americans, and maybe as human beings, we always strive to do better. And we should always strive to do better. No doubt my daughter will be telling her kids how bad she had it under her dad, and she'll be even better to her kid than I was to her. That's how we should be, as long as that we can be that way. We do pay a price for that, though.
Hey guys, I'm going to bring in, we got one more guest. It looks like his connection is pretty poor though. So hopefully it gets better. Michael, you there? Michael Britton. You hear me, man? I think he's having calm issues. Yeah, you're cutting up real bad, Ben. All right, I'm working on that. Somebody else can pick up the rate of fire.
I would say, like, my concerns, a lot has been brought up, so I can't really go on what everyone said thus far. But the things that concern me that I see is that there's just less conversation and dialogue between, like, our politicians and also, like, ourselves. Just you're seeing this movement of a populace. Like, it's been shown that Democrats are moving to cities that are more in line with their political values, where they're having the same types of neighbors' core belief. And same with Republicans, either going to Republican states, Republican cities, and we're just sort of insulating ourselves from one another, which is not good. It's kind of like Just like getting in an argument with your spouse or something. You can't ignore that shit. You gotta, face it and work it out. The things that concern me beyond that is just like, gerrymandering that we're seeing in congressional districts, essentially having it where it's, either totally leans Republican or totally leans Democrat, to where, essentially like a populace gets cut out, and that erosion of those, those voting rights, then leads to an erosion in faith and confidence in the American system of government. And when you have that, then then you're talking about real problems, right? We have, as a country, we have one of the lowest voter registration turnouts among Western nations. And if the government that is formed and that is responsible for running the government, running the country, doesn't have the vote of a majority of its people, then where does it get its mandate from? So those are kind of those are the main concerns for me, among some other things.
All right, I'll jump in and say, I don't know, it's sounding a little too negative for me. Not that I disagree with any of the points that we're making, and just that last one, yes. The fact that Americans are so apathetic, and I used to think they're apathetic because they're lazy. I don't know. I'm growing that way myself. I don't trust our system. I don't trust its honesty and integrity. I don't trust its reliability. And frankly, with a two-party system, I said I was going to say some positive things, but I'm back in your play here, Michael. With the two-party system, I'm given the choice between two real losers every single time. So, when you say, well, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils, here's a big hint. You're still voting for evil. So, yeah. When we talk about these things, it's easy for me to get lost in the sauce here and go, yeah, what garbage. Okay, hold on. Whoa. Everything is bad. Everything sucks. It's not an honest inventory. It's not. I can tell you right now, wasn't born with satellite communications. So I've seen this technologies come up and, just a whole entire office, not a computer, not a phone, an entire entertainment system business office at my fingertips in the subway with me, for crying out loud. I'm talking to friends and family in Germany, Canada, and Korea. And it's just not costing me squat. Anybody can afford this. So I look at the technologies. I think about, wouldn't this be great if I could time travel? What era would I go to? Here's an era I would like to go to, an era with antibiotics. I mean, the medicine that keeps us alive, that we enjoy today, that keeps us healthy, not just alive longer, but higher quality of life. We enjoy that today. We could keep going. I mean, so the technologies, the medicines. How about our liberties? We actually are, look, as old as I am, and I'm as old as dirt, the fact is, 3 years before I was born, the civil rights movement ended. It ended 54 to 64, guys. I don't want to go back to when homosexual was a crime, when blacks were oppressed, with, Hispanics were discounted in, employment. I don't want to go back to that garbage. I happen to like our civil rights movement. So I got to tell you, I think as a whole, we're doing pretty damn well today. And oh, by the way, it isn't like we shouldn't take too deep of a bow here, because there were some pretty intelligent, squared away people who said life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It was a Canadian instructor I was working with in South Korea many years ago who said, do you know what our Constitution guarantees us? I said, no, I assume the same. He goes, no, life, liberty, and good governance. He said, the only Constitution in the world that promises your right to happiness is the United States of America. So while I'm certainly willing to, pull my rose-colored glasses off and jump into the fray and talk about all the warts and nasty smells that come from this thing we call America, holy crap, guys, it's a great time to be alive, and this is the place to be.
Yeah, exactly, Doc. You know, I've gone to a lot of countries around this world and stuff, and I can always point to something that's better here in America. Yeah, there's some cool things in other countries, don't get me wrong. You know, it's not bad living in New Zealand. You can have a great life there. I'd rather be here. Yeah, you know what? Um, this America is the best place to be. People are fighting to get here. I was on a relief mission in Zambia one time, and the guy goes, "Yeah, America, the greatest country in the world." And I go, "Why is it so great?" His reply was, "Even poor people are fat."
It's a fantastic point, Les.
Yeah, I mean, this is the greatest nation in the world. Yes, we're in a bad period right now, and it does seem to be getting worse. But I still have my faith, and I'm not giving up that faith because I have no reason to. Is my government making really stupid decisions right now? Hell yes, it is. It is doing some damn stupid stuff, mainly probably out of corruption more than anything, you know. But I got faith because you know what? I'm going to go to the polls later this year, and I'm going to vote for the other guy. You know what? I'm going to pick a guy I think's going to do the best. I'll live with my choices. You know, in most elections I've voted for in my life, especially a presidential one, the person I get behind in the beginning usually doesn't make it past Iowa or New Hampshire, you know. But when the time comes along and the state I live in is a Super Tuesday state, I pick the best guy that's going to represent me on that day. And you know what? Then it comes down to an election, and I got two people to pick from. And I do think one year I did the whole thing, 2016 to be exact. I did the write-in thing to put in the person I thought would do the best. Bad news, guys. General Mattis didn't get elected.
I did the same thing with Perot, and I got Clinton, and I got the assault weapons ban. So those of you out there that want to blame somebody for that, you can blame me because I was part of that problem. Because I voted for who I thought was the best candidate rather than voting for which candidate I thought would be closest to my views that would win. And I never did it again after that because I paid that price for 10 years when I was in the prime of my life. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. And I've learned my lesson. I'll never do it again. And I tell you guys that are thinking about doing it, don't make that mistake. Especially in the last election, I saw that back when Trump, people were like, I don't like Trump. I don't like Biden. I'm going to write in some hokey pokey, whoever, right? Libertarian or whatever. Thank you. Because you got Joe Biden elected. You were part of that problem, just like I was at one time. And I hope you learned your lesson too. But this isn't just about that. I tell you that Les is right. One of our biggest problems in this country is obesity. And that's a phenomenal problem to have because most countries, the starvation can be their problem. They don't even have enough food. We have a surplus of food. If we have such a surplus of food that if you eat McDonald's to fill yourself up, you've taken in enough calories for like 2 days in one meal. And then at the next meal, you're going to be wanting that again. They have perfected food in this country to the point that's so processed that you're getting more calories than your stomach even knows what to do with. It can't even process it. If you put one McDonald's in every African nation, you would solve African hunger tomorrow. All right?
Yeah, except they have heart disease.
Out to each house once a day. It's insane, man. It's a good problem to have, but it's the pendulum swinging too far. I saw a comment earlier, and I've got a buddy that makes the same thing. He likes to kind of fantasize about going back in time. He said, "Hey man, I hate the world that we live in. I hate what's going on with the country, with all the wokeness and whatever. Man, I sure wish I could go back in time." I said, "Where would you go?" He said, "Well, I'm Italian. I like to go back to Roman times." Wouldn't you? No, I don't want to go back to anywhere. I don't want to go back 50 years. Let me tell you something about me personally. One, if I went back more than 100 years, I'd be blind and I wouldn't have no teeth. I probably, as old as I am, I probably wouldn't even be around. I'm 46 years old. I don't know what the average life expectancy for a male was 100 years ago, but it probably wasn't a whole lot over 46 years. And I don't even know that I would even have ever existed. Because when I was born, I had a problem with a valve in my stomach called pyloric stenosis. I got a surgery. They fixed it. I'm great now. I don't know that I would have survived as an infant if I lived 100 years ago. I might not even be here. So these are things that you've got to think about when you fantasize about going back in time. Be real serious about it. Think about what you need in your life today and think about how much of that wouldn't be there if you lived just 100 years ago. Things are better today. And like I said before, is America in decline? It depends on what decline means. Is it in a moral decline? Yeah, I believe absolutely it is. But do you really want to trade that for your health and your family's health, your children's health? I don't know. That decision's up to you guys.
Yeah, I agree with the moral. I think that's probably one of the biggest problems. Our good times have just led to, just like Chad was saying, these like fantasy problems. And, you know, we're already kind of starting to see some pushback to that, right? So, you know, we look at, again, going back to like the George Floyd riots and stuff, you know, the big thing that was getting pushed was, oh, defund police, reallocate those funds to XYZ. And some of these cities did that. And now what are we seeing? We're seeing just unbelievable crime. We even did a whole live stream about that, the rise in crime in some of these major metropolitan areas because of these cities that took those type of approaches. And so we're seeing even those people that, you know, some of them that were calling for that stuff back then are now doing 180s, right? San Francisco, I believe, is even trying to step it up a little bit. So that boggles my mind. But again, you know, we've created weak men and creating hard times. And then the U.S. military, I have no question in my mind that the U.S. military right now is the number one fighting force. And I think we could take on any threat in the world. Now, can we take on multiple threats? I don't know. That could be debated. But as far as like us going up against communist China right now, I feel like we would hand China their ass. And after seeing Russia's performance in Ukraine, not that I want to go down to Ukraine rabbit hole, you know, they've got some learning to do. They don't have near the logistics that experience that we have, and logistics wins wars. But what are we getting as a result of, you know, this lackadaisical, easy civilization that we have? Well, we're getting forced integration of, you know, combat arms, MOSs, even though we've done comprehensive studies that have shown that no, all male infantry units perform out better. But yet, you know, society now, because it's becoming weak mentally and morally, is saying, oh, you will integrate because that's what we want, regardless of how the performance is. Okay. We're seeing some of the other stuff that we've talked about at length in the U.S. military. You know, we're seeing freaking recruiting ads that feature, you know, that want to push social justice themes. Like, there's no reason for that. The U.S. military has one purpose, that is to eliminate and kill the enemy. Okay, combat effectiveness. That's what recruiting. If you watch United States Marine Corps commercials, what is it? You got Marines hitting the beach, Marines landing in helicopters, tanks blowing up shit. You know, freaking Marines with swords slaying dragons. Like, that's how you recruit young into the mix. We don't need Emma and her two mommy story. So we've got some hard times materializing, and I don't think we have declined significantly, but there's no question that those type of attitudes and ways of approaching things lead to declines in society.
I think I'm a little more pessimistic than you guys, as my intro probably indicated. I agree with everything you guys have said. I think we have it good, but my argument is we have it too good. And that's why we're seeing this rise of wokeism. You know, Dr. James Lindsay, who is the world recognized expert on CRT, has said we are in a new communist revolution in America. And I absolutely agree with that. You know, we have no idea what impact social media is going to have in our society. There's a lot of unknowns. You know, Bruce made the point that the pendulum has swung far the other way. Michael says we don't talk to each other anymore. That's absolutely correct. I think it goes further than that. We don't understand each other anymore. Michael, I know you're familiar with Jonathan Haidt's work. I've mentioned it in the past. And, you know, he basically, in a nutshell, I'll mention it again. He's a PhD, and I don't remember what discipline, but he did a study and surveyed lefts and right and political left, political right in America wanted the participants to respond as the other side. Well, what happened was he found out that a majority of left-wingers did not understand right-wing positions. They simply put the opposite of what their view was. Right-wingers they understood leftist positions. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I don't remember the name of the book. There it is right there, The Righteous Mind. That's it. Wonderful book. Wonderful book. Highly recommended. But we got one side of the political aisle that really doesn't understand the other. And Jordan Peterson, the psychologist from Canada, says we don't know when the left has gone too far. We know when the right has gone too far because we've studied Nazi Germany, even though I don't believe that's right wing. I think fascism is very much a left wing policy, and we can go into that later. I'm ready for that. But we understand when the right goes too far. We don't understand left. I say the left has gone too far with this woke bullshit.
All right. Being the libtard snowflake on the panel. Let's have that dialogue.
Hey, at least showing it, man.
let's have a ask a question in terms of like how I view something, and or I could ask you guys, a question on the moral thing. I had a question on that. Whichever way you want to play it, I'm open.
Ask me, Michael. I'll field your question.
Okay. So you said moral decline. America's in moral decline. Can you give me some specific examples or how you feel like, morality wise we're in decline?
Go ahead, Doc.
Segregation. Look, I mentioned earlier that civil rights movement, 1954, 1964, came up with affirmative action as well as several other, nationwide movements. And wonderful stuff came of that. So why is it now? Honestly, I can't even say I'm one of the gap generations caught right between the boomers and the 10th generation anyway, X gen. But nominally you can call me X gen. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But what I'm trying to say is that was done before me. I can't take credit for that. It was done before I was even born. And so then fine, I'm an X-gener. We didn't segregate. We bought that. We bought that hook, line, and sinker, that people have inherent value and that we needed to include, and not just include for token's sake, but engage, include and engage. In fact, one of the ways that they really struck home about why it is that diversity was so important and powerful was that they constantly reminded us that we're an individualist society. I'm going back to the 1980s, guys, when I was in high school. We're an individualist society, and the greatest diversity is the individual. So we're individuals, right? Why is campus being diversified? Segregated. Why are schools being segregated? Why are businesses being segregated? Why, Coca-Cola Company and all of this other stuff? Why are they being taught to hate and hate along identity lines? Not just racist. People throw that word out. It's racist. It'd be more accurate to say it's bigotry because it encompasses religion and gender and all these other stuff. But it doesn't matter. When you say, why am I worried about the moral fiber of America? It's because there seems to be a very angry, even violent regression back towards segregation and the rejection of the wonderful liberal ideas of equality, and that's been replaced with equity, which is wickedly dangerous and fundamentally anti-equal.
Okay. All right. I'm not following you on, you're saying, because you're using the term segregation, like that we're resegregating society. Okay, can you explain that a little bit more so I understand? Because I'm not.
How about this? You go onto campus and they have a group that says, "Hey, we're a support group, and we're a support group for whatever it is." It doesn't matter. They have an identity group. All right, but let's grab one. Let's say it's a support group for lesbians, or let's say it's a support group for we're Black Americans, or let's say it's a support group for, I don't care, Democrat Druids. They'll have a space a common area on campus where they do this, and other people coming, genuinely coming to show their support because, hey, diversity in the rainbow, right? So they're genuinely, sincerely coming, and they're like, stop at the door. You're not one of our identity group. Get off. And in fact, at least, although far too little, far too late, some of the campuses' boards are now beginning to lash out at this. I mean, you look at what's going up in Vermont. What's the name of that university up there that they're having trouble with? But there's a couple of others that you see that they're now saying the two black women, was that Rice University? I don't want to misquote. If it wasn't Rice, it wasn't Rice. But the two black women that did the black support group that kicked out all the white students, they were founded, and they were basically censored. They weren't kicked out or anything, but they were censored. Like I said, a little too little, a little too late. But the fact of the matter is, Michael, come on. This is a gay Jewish group, and you can't come into this, this common space area on campus unless, you have your gay Jewish card. I don't know what the hell it is. Like I said, this is just absolutely segregation. I don't know how else to explain that. If that's not segregation, what is?
I'm gonna throw in on top of this the transgender athlete stuff, right? Like, how is this acceptable? Some male self-identifies as female swimmer just crushed all the women recently, and I think it was a collegiate swimming race. Right? I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. We've probably all seen the meme where it's like 1,000 years from now, some archaeologist is digging up the remains of a human being or something, and it's like, oh, there's a male skeleton. This is a female skeleton. Can we quit fooling ourselves and quit pretending that these men that self-identify as women are women, especially when it comes to athletics? You have these young women that train their whole life for these opportunities, and they're just getting destroyed by these subpar male athletes who have, gone into the females realm, whether they're being legitimately think they're winner, they're just dropping down just so they can be winners. There's an actual physical difference between a man and a woman. If you haven't figured that out in life, there's no hope for you. But it's just ridiculous.
Right. There he is, Michael. Yeah. Well, no, when you talk about like the transgender entering the different, like men saying, hey, I'm a woman, so I'm going to go do weightlifting and just absolutely crush world records, right? And he's not even a particularly good weightlifter, man. You see that British disc jockey or whatever it was did it? Oh my God, he trolled the wild world of sports, man, and he did it brilliantly. But here's my point about that. It's kind of getting a little away from Michael's point about evidence of segregation, but what it's doing is it's showing us the difference between equality and equity. Look, at its very, I don't mean the definition like a denotation, but certainly the connotation or the nature of, the intent of equal rights was equal rights to the opportunity. That is at the beginning of the race, so to speak. If we use a foot race as an analogy, you have a right to run this race, right? You have a right to enter the race. You have a right to compete. That's equal, and that's equality. Equity says you have a right to the same outcome from this competition as everyone else. And so when you see that, yeah, these are like, this is the, I guess, the decay of the Marxist equity rather than egalitarian libertarian equality. So yeah, I have a problem with it. Now I have to admit, since you brought it up, Brent, I have to admit that I kind of feel like I sit back and I watch that and I go, oh, that is so bad. That is so wrong on so many levels, not the least of which are all the young female athletes that are getting bumped out of scholarships and everything else. So there's a financial detriment too. But at the same time, I also look at that and go, and these are the same people that said women should be in combat arms in spite of all of the, 25, 26 years of research by multiple governments across the globe that showed no, that's not the case. They actually shouldn't be. That they perform less, less well, and significantly less to a performance and stuff like this. But now we're seeing this. And I'm going, well, maybe this is the answer. Maybe we say, hey, females, you want to join the NFL? Go for it. And we go, yeah, they're allowed to be kickers, and that's it. And then we say, hey, men, go into women's soccer, and we see high school boys go into women's soccer and just absolutely dominate the globe. The globe.
That's the whole transgender male female thing is interesting. It's something that 20 years ago nobody really talked about, and today you can't turn your TV on without seeing a cowboy show with a transgendered person in there. It's very strange to me, but I'll say this, I'm kind of torn a little bit, and I know you talked on it, Doc, about the difference between what was it you said, equality and equity, right? So I saw a South Park episode today that my buddy sent me, and it's a bit hilarious. If you guys haven't seen it, look it up. It's only about 3 minutes long, but there's a women's sporting event, and they're up there talking about how excited they are that there's a transgender that's going to be competing against them, and it ends up being Macho Man. And Macho Man's been transitioning for 2 weeks, and he dominates. I mean, he stomps the living shit out of them, right? And of course, he wins by far in every competition. And he's just pumped up on cocaine, man. He's eating Slim Jims, and he's like, I win in everything. I'm awesome. I'm a macho woman, right? Hilarious if you haven't seen it, but it was a joke at the time, right? It was funny at the time, but now it's not really so funny. I mean, I got a daughter, and my daughter's not really too interested in athletics. I was, but I would like to envision a world where if our daughters wanted to partake in sports, they would be able to partake in sports, and they would be able to competitively partake in sports just like boys do. If we throw them all on the same team, that's really not going to happen. That really can't happen. I was watching this thing, and I'll mess it up, but you guys get the point. They were talking about the Serena Williams sisters, or whatever those awesome two sisters that play tennis are, right? And they have been the best in the world. Like, I don't think many people argue that the best female in the world. But if they competed against men, they would have been like number 156. We wouldn't even be talking about them, because there's that many tennis players that are male that are better rated than they are. So we would never even known who they were. And I've never inspired women. I'm sure they're inspirational to young women growing up that are involved in sports. So I guess sort of like my thing is, I'm kind of torn. Do we either throw everybody in the same pot and we say, you all compete against one another. We'll treat you all equally, and we'll see who rises to the top. And simply by doing so, we suppress our women, because they can't compete in most sports against most men? Or do we separate them out and we go, here's a sport for girls, and here's a sport for boys, and we'll find the best girls that are out there, and we'll find the best boys that are out there, and we'll let you both compete and have your titles, have your basketball teams, have whatever it is that your swimming teams, whatever it is that you do. And then what do we do with those transgenders that are somewhere in the middle? Do we require them to have their own sport, which is what I think we should do? I'll take it a step further. I think it's kind of BS. I do think that there are some transgendered athletes that aren't transgender in the terms of psychologically, but they are simply gaming the system. I'll go on a record. I'll say that. I believe that's the case. And I believe that they suck as male athletes. And they go, well, you know what? I'll go beat some girls and I'll be number one. And they let their hair grow out, and they do their nails, and they put on a dress, and out they go. Now, I'm not saying that's all of them, but I believe that's some of them. And this is a situation that we have to deal with, because what is it doing? It is tearing down what females have worked to accomplish for the last 60, 70 years, probably, since there was ever such a thing as a female sport. They're tearing down all those records, and they're taking those females that have literally, they're living at their prime. They've busted their butt to get there physically and to learn the sport and to compete at the sport, and they're just casting them aside like it was all for nothing. I kind of have a problem with that. And I don't know exactly where this all hashes out, but I believe, Michael, that would be an example of moral decline within the country, where you have men pushing their way into female sports, going, "We're going to take your medals from you," and I have a problem with that.
Muted, Spencer. Uh-oh, he's got his comm issues again. It's the Russians. Hey, let me just say that Michael and I used to work for Ross Pro. I know that came up earlier. That was a really good man. He's a good dude. So, anyways, while Michael's coming back, let's somebody else picked up the fire here. Chad, I know you got an article waiting here, man. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there are a lot of universities hosting Black-only graduation ceremonies. That's essentially that was big in 2019, 2020. That's just what Doc was saying. That's why I posted on there. I think another area where we see some decline is the acceptance of political violence. I had the pleasure, and I say that sarcastically, of reading the Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook by Mark Bray. Mark Bray is a history professor at Rutgers University, and I use the term historian lightly because this book was fucking garbage. As a historian, he's garbage, and he's a Marxist sympathizer. The book was painful to read. I did take some things away from it. At the top of the list, Bray points out that fascism and communism, both collectivist ideologies, I might add, are at odds for power and both anti-liberal and anti-capitalist in their beliefs. Essentially, what I took away from the book is how dangerous collectivism is, whatever form it takes. Bray claims that while people often labeled fascist, like Donald Trump, aren't textbook fascist or textbook national socialists, they enact policies that he deems fascistic. Therefore, Antifa violence is justified. So by that rationale, I can flip it around, and a militant conservative or militant libertarian could say, well, Obamacare isn't technically communism, but it's communistic. Therefore, let's go hunt down Democrats. I don't think so. This is wrong, and it's a wrong way to think. And we have a professor university touting this crap. A professor in university actively teaching, touting that violence is okay. There's another example of moral decline.
All right.
Good, Michael? Yep, you're good. Good call.
Got me. Okay. All right. So, Bruce, yeah, I think the transgender thing as it relates to sport is just one very small aspect of transgender rights, which that's where I feel like the discussion on equal treatment and whatnot needs to take place. And also on the sports side, I am in agreement with you. I don't think it's fair that a transgender male or a transgender female, someone who identifies as a female and then goes and competes with women that were born female, but obviously don't have the muscle structure and the skeletal structure of what this other person has. I don't think that's fair. I don't. And something needs to be worked out there. But I think what happens though, in terms of this conversation or this topic, is it gets too much focus on that. The other aspect is, equal treatment under the law, equal access to the opportunity and education and whatnot, essentially. And that's where, from the left's perspective, is trying to make that happen, to where any boy or girl, and I'm not going to get into psychiatry or anything of when someone could identify as this, that I'm not going to touch that. But what I'm just saying is that in terms of, like, remember that person, let's just say high school age, can go into a classroom, however which way they feel or are, blah, 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 and just get a right to a good, decent education. There's a There's a law that was passed here in Texas by Governor Abbott, where it was essentially, you know, asking neighbors to turn in other parents of kids that were going through transgender therapy, you know, essentially asking them to narc. And I would think that in this group where we very much fear government overreach and reach into our private lives, our private business, that would be something that, you know, we would all be against. And yet, you know, I see that similar law here. I see it in Florida, the don't say gay thing, trying to you know, legislate what can be said in schools. That to me is dangerous territory.
Well,
let
I'll
me
say, go ahead,
let
Brent.
me jump in real quick. I just want to talk on the, you know, the Governor Abbott thing. So yeah, I'm for small government, but here's the thing. I'm not going to be quiet when that's child abuse, right? If you see your neighbor beating the shit out of his child and making him live outside, just chained to a fence or something else in the back, you're not going to be quiet. You're going to call that in, right? Well,
yeah, but this isn't child abuse, though.
I think it is. I think a parent that's allowing a child to go get these surgeries and stuff, a child is not capable of making that determination that he is of the opposite sex. And by a parent facilitating that and taking their child to a doctor to get a life-altering surgery or some sort of something, I believe is child abuse and thus should be reported. So,
yeah, you know, if again, I don't want to get into like the science too much, but what I would say is that would be a law or something, like if the American Psychiatric Association came forward and put out, you know, like they get together every year, the God, what's the PDR, the registry of like psychotic disorders, even though transgender doesn't fall under that. But if, let's say for some reason that there was like an aspect of it that fell under that, and they were going to do an announcement like, hey, we're seeing this like unnecessary involvement of young children being sent to these gender reassignment surgeries, things like that, and we need to study it. Fine, okay, something coming from the medical community to do that would be great. But hey, also know that, you know, the psychiatric, even the association I'm referring to, not until like the late 70s, 80s, considered homosexuality to be a psychotic disorder. So, which, you know, now we wouldn't consider that at all to be the case. Yet it wasn't that long ago that it was a registered disorder. So I'm all for having that debate in the scientific community and then discussing in terms of like what's proper and what's not, and making recommendations to, you know, our politicians. But my viewpoint is from Abbott, that Abbott's reasons are purely political, and it's being used as a wedge issue.
I agree that his issues are purely political, but I also agree with Brent. I think that children, young kids, should not be going through any permanent physical changes that doesn't work to save their life. Let me give you an extreme example, Michael. I'm
in agreement with that also.
Okay,
but all I'm saying is, but from a higher level, all I'm saying is like, we don't need to go into like the weeds of the specific of the issue, but I'm just saying from like a higher level, it's like keep the government in terms of you know, like the health and safety, like keep them out, other than obviously the examples of social abuse, you know, domestic abuse, excuse me.
Well, I think that it could be looked upon as domestic abuse. I mean, if I was 7 years old and I convinced my parents that I should be a one-armed kid, should I be able to have one of my arms surgically removed? Is it that far
The
of a
analogy
question?
doesn't work.
Yeah, it does for me, because if you are 7 years old and you convince your parents that you should be a female and not a male, you're having appendages removed. At least some could. Some could go through what I think are even worse treatments, which would be hormone therapies. These things are not really reversible. once you go through them as an adolescent, turning into a teenager, going through puberty, they're not reversible. And if all of a sudden this young person turns to be an adult, maybe they're 18, maybe they're 22, and they decide that, hey, you know what, that wasn't right for me. Well, there's not really any going back. I handle this thing with kids' gloves because I think that every situation is different, but I also have some major problems with some cases that I've seen where some parents seem to be motivated to support and pressure a child to change their gender when it seems very inappropriate to me at a very young age, rather than just saying, hey, when you're 18, you can get that tattoo, but until then you can't, which is what was going on when I was a kid. I know all you guys can relate to that. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody at my age that was going through any type of transgender anything when I was young.
Okay. So let's dial it back just a minute, because I'm absolutely agreeing with you, but I'm going to take it farther because we're focusing on transgender just a little too much here. What I'm saying is surgery is surgery. Like, I don't know, you're having an appendix taken out, right? I don't know, you were in a car accident and there's surgery. And that can include cosmetic surgery, like facial reconstruction, or hell, I would argue at some point, if you have a disfigurement in your bone, spine, and we're putting bars in there for a surgery to straighten up your spine. To varying degrees, depending on who you ask and which doctor, some of that is cosmetic, some of it isn't. But my point here is I'm seeing 15-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls going in for a boob job, a silicone implant. We're not talking about, oh, they're queer or lesbian or something like that. We're not, they're heterosexual. And I'm against that. I think that's child abuse.
Fair enough. Good point. I want to say this about my point, Michael, because I'm sure we have a huge transgender population watching this stream. But in all seriousness, look, when it comes, and I'm not even going to limit it to transgender. I'm going to say anything under the rainbow, right? If you want to be anything under the rainbow, I don't have a problem with that. All right. Me and my wife last night went to a sushi restaurant, and we had a transgender waiter. And let me tell you guys something. He wasn't fooling nobody, okay? But that's okay. I tipped him the highest tip I could tip him, and he gave good service. I have no problem with it, right? At all. Do what you want to do, but don't infringe on other people, okay? I don't know where I am on this sports thing, and you're right. Like, that's kind of a hot topic, right? That may be the kind of next abortion topic where both sides can make great points, and it's really hard to move anywhere on it as a nation. But I believe that no matter who you are in this country, no matter what you want to dress as or pretend you are, and it can be much more extreme. If you want to pretend you're a dinosaur, if you want to pretend you're a wolf or a kitten, that's fine. I think that as an American, you should be able to do that. But you need to understand how fortunate you are in this country that you're able to do that, and that the majority of normies will allow you to do that, because there's a lot of countries out there that they'll just tie you to a chair and throw you off a roof, and that's that. Right now, today, that can happen.
So, Michael, I want to bring something up real quick, man. I have to disagree. Big shocker there. But I think the reason I disagree is you're elevating intellectualism. The scientific community has been infected with this wokeism. That's not me saying it. That's people like Dr. Deborah Soh saying it in her book, and she's a neuroscientist, The End of Gender. She details how fellow scientists and even the media jumped on studies that fit their narrative, but ignored those that proposed biological differences that lead to differences in, say, for example, interest in both sexes. This woke crap has infected academia, so why should I trust them when discourse is not even taking place in academia?
So that is a great point, Chad. I mean, in many studies, we've seen in medical studies and whatnot, there's an unconscious bias, right, that occurs where you're looking for a result. Like, you're doing the study to prove your hypothesis, but without even knowing it, you can affect your statistics and get the result that you're ultimately looking for. I'm not against having the debate, and academia, whether it be scientists or purely academics, having that discussion on transgender. I feel like we went off the path a little bit, because the question was in regards to moral standards, and morality covers a whole lot under a whole subset of topics. Like, we could talk about, what is doing the right thing. Earlier, Doc, we're talking about segregation or resegregation, but I think you meant in the sense of, groups of people in the workplace or in the school or something like that.
All of the above, and when you were gone, I'm sorry, all of the above, and when you were gone, Chad put up like 75 universities that were holding Black only graduation. So yeah, and it happens. I'm seeing it happen here in Washington, D.C. in the federal agencies as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that back up, because I think before you were talking about student groups, right, Doc? So yeah, student groups, you have Hispanic, Latino student group, you have African American student group, you have the Jewish student group, Christian,
Michael,
Future Farmers of
Michael, what
America.
you don't have are white student groups.
Yeah. So, well, white student groups, like in terms of what?
In terms of saying whites only.
Okay.
I think, people talk about like,
what is a whites only group?
Yeah, exactly. What is a blacks only group or a Jew only group? But I think that I'll tell you what it is. It's going the wrong direction. I'm not a proponent for it. I'm quite the opposite. I thought when I was growing up that we were headed on a trajectory to really work towards ending racism. And I remember what the line was when I was growing up, that, everybody's different. And Bruce likes to take these things that people say and then put them in his little theory box. Then after 20 years, come back and see if they're still applying. If they do, he starts leaning them towards fact than theory. And I do believe everybody's different and everybody's special. And I think that if we treat everybody that way, then everybody kind of gets what they want. But when we start putting people into boxes and segregating people, and it could be based on color, I have a problem with that. And talking about the sort of decline in America, I've seen this just recently. Imagine if I was president of the United States, I won, because I know everybody would vote for me if I were to run. So
hell yeah,
that's
totally vote for that.
And I said, here's the deal, guys. I says, I'm going to pick a vice president, but I've got some criteria. And my first criteria is he has to be male, and my second is he has to be white. Then I said, and I'll take it a step further. I'm going to put a Supreme Court justice in. But when I put a Supreme Court justice in, I got a little criteria. He has to be male and he has to be white. Now, those would be clearly sexist and racist statements. And I would agree with you 100%. Okay? We've had a first Black Supreme Court justice. We've never had an Asian American. We've never had an Indian American or Jewish or any other one. Pick whatever you want. I think we've had Jewish, but you get my point. We've not had any other different racial groups, right? So why would a president be applauded? The leader of this country applauded for making racist and sexist statements based on his criteria for picking people to be at the highest level of the land. Now, I have no problem with more Black or female Supreme Court justices. I have no problem with more Black or female vice presidents or presidents for that matter. But you know what my criteria would be? Best person for the job, regardless of your skin color. Oh, I know that's taboo. That's going to offend some people. There's some snowflakes melting down out there. There's people making that face right now. But I'm going to tell you, if you're transgendered and I think you're the best person for the job, and your values align themselves the closest to mine, you're going to get Bruce's vote if there's a chance that you could win. I don't give a crap about genders, color. I have a problem with us turning the corner and the pendulum starting to swing the other way, where all of a sudden it becomes to be trendy again to be racist and to be sexist, as long as it's a specific sex and a specific race.
I hear you. Okay. I'm gonna come back to that. There was a couple of people in the chat that called me a retard because I asked the question, what is what is a white group look like to you? Let me explain why I asked that question, right? It, if you say, oh, like I'm talking about an Irish American or Polish American or French American group, then yeah, that's one thing, and that's great. You're centering around a culture regarding your heritage and whatnot. If it's whites only, then in my interpretation, that is a more of a race-based type of group, which, and we know that there's a history of white supremacy, whites only segregation. So that's why I asked that question, panel or
So
chat.
you're against BET then, right? Black Entertainment Television, right? You're coming out right now, Michael, saying that's a racist organization that needs to be shut down as anti-American.
Okay, so you're saying that there should be a whites entertainment only?
No, I'm
channel?
saying we shouldn't. No,
Well, I mean, if you have
no, no,
BET,
no,
why
no,
can't you
no,
have
no fair,
WET?
no fair saying that I'm for segregation. I clearly said I'm not for segregation, so I'm clearly against a white only anything. My family isn't white only, so hell no. But wait, because I'm against a white only, I'm not allowed to be against. I'm not allowed to be against a black only, a Jew only, a female.
We're talking about in the context of student groups, right?
No.
The other thing was about universities.
I'm talking about in the context, it is about universities, but I only started there. I mentioned several times, I'm talking about federal agencies. I'm talking about corporations. I'm talking about the United States of America. If you claim to be a state or a territory thereof, this should be illegal. Black American Month should be illegal.
Black what?
Women's Month should be illegal. This is about, no, I'm not for segregation, dude. No.
I didn't say you're for segregation.
Well, no, I know, but you're saying, well, then you would be okay with this or that. I'm trying to answer. I'm not angry at you, Michael.
No,
I don't. Emphatically, no.
I didn't understand your example of black entertainment television, of like why you brought that up. I'm not.
Well, where's the white entertainment and television? Where's the Hispanic?
That was my response question to you. That's why I asked you. I said,
entertainment television, right? It shouldn't exist, or maybe it should. You know, hold on, hear me out. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe the fact is that we should allow racists and bigots and hatred and neo-Nazis and Antifa inside of America. Maybe we should allow and respect the fact that some town in Arkansas wants to be all white people, and all the black and Hispanics and Asians that go there go, man, I don't want to live there. Maybe we should just respect people. I don't know. But if we're going to say, no, the dominant isn't allowed, then none of them are allowed. No black education or black entertainment television. No, BET's got to go.
So why is BET racist? Or
black entertainment television?
Black.
Michael,
right?
Would you have such a hard time?
Hold on. Let me finish this line. Let me have this back and forth with one person, please, because I want to get this out. So, black entertainment, it's a channel, right? That's owned, and its focus is on black culture and does programming on black culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that racist? That it's catering to a specific demographic? How so? Now, if you were to say that the owners of black entertainment television only hired blacks, then yes, that would be something. But you're not saying that. You're just talking about the entertainment perspective.
I don't even know if that's true. So no, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is it's racist. It's bold-faced, capital letters, racist. Now, what you're saying, what I think you're asking is that violent? Point to the doll, the old point to the doll and tell me where it hurt you. Where did you get your Google? Yeah. So if you're saying, what I'm saying here is you're asking me if it's racist. Yes. Did it hurt me? Let me point which part it hurt. It hurt this part over here. No, it didn't hurt me. It didn't hurt me. I'm not hurt it. Oh, wait, I'm offended. Oh, wait, it should be shut down because it's offended me. This is what I'm saying. I'm going back and forth with you, Michael, because on one hand, I am split on this. On one hand, I'm okay with Black entertainment, television, supporting and covering Black culture. And I don't, maybe even if they hired only Black employees, I don't really care. You know, at one point, I'm supportive of that. I really am. I'm thinking, well, come on, man. That's a culture, and that's part of America. America's both a melting pot and a mixed salad, you know? So I'm like, yeah, it's part of our history. It's part of who we are. Let them have that. But why is it that that's okay, and yet the so-called dominant culture is not okay? No. Come on, dude. Come on. We need a White History Month if we have a Black History Month and a Hispanic.
So what is a White History Month?
A month that is dedicated to elevating and pointing out all the contributions that white Americans have made to the world.
And what are white Americans? Are you talking Western Europeans? Are we talking Scandinavian?
Look, it's the same thing with African Americans. What are African Americans? Are we talking about those that are from Egypt? Are we talking about those that are from South Africa? Those that are from Zimbabwe? They've hijacked the term to mean those people that have black skin, right? But they leave out those that are of Arab descent, and they leave out those whites. I mean, I could very well have been born in South Africa and immigrate to this country and be a true African American, but no one in this country really accepts that as being what it means. Here's my point on this whole thing, Michael. You're kind of making my point. Why do we have any of that? Let's get rid of all of it.
Yeah. You know what? And honestly, and African Americans would say the same thing. African Americans, I feel like, would say, I wish there wasn't a Black History Month.
You're probably right.
And
there are some that do.
And that we all got.
And what's his name? The actor's name just jumped out. Morgan Freeman. They say there shouldn't be Black History Month.
Let me just say I apologize because I was trying to get my my buddy Michael Brenton on here tonight, as well as Uniform Tango 74, who's been on here before, to get their points of views. But Michael Brenton's he's a Black conservative, and I don't know what he would have said on this topic, but I would have probably I'm inclined to believe that he would have agreed that just like that actor who it's forgetting Morgan Freeman. I'm inclined to believe that he would have been in the line with that type of thinking.
I tell you, I got tons of friends and family of all colors. I don't know who I'm leaving out here. Pretty much so across the board, regardless of whatever race that they associate with, they don't like any of this. They don't want to be elevated. They don't want to be degraded. They just want to be left the hell alone to work their job, be a good American, raise their kid, and be treated fairly. Nothing more. Nothing more. When I sit down with them, regardless of what color they are, and I'm talking about all colors, they're just like me in terms of what their goals as an American is and what their beliefs are. And we can have discussions about anything from race to politics. But a lot of times when we talk about race, we don't have anything to talk about because we don't have any differences that are solely divided because of our skin features. And I think that's most of America. But this goes back to that woke comment. The wokeism that Chad's talking about is that it's all over the TV. It's all over the news. It's all throughout our colleges. Why is that? That's not how the majority of Americans feel, regardless of their color or even religion or gender for that matter. Nobody cares but that very small vocal minority that makes a big deal about everything.
Yeah, I mean, so that's just it. So I'm going through Pennsylvania and I'm seeing like the Amish village there. And I think that they're good people and good-hearted, and I think they mean well. But if you think I don't drive by there and think bigot, you're wrong. I think bigot. When I go by the Hasidic Jews in New York, I think, oh, those are really good, hardworking people, great communities. I'm sure they're bigots. When I go by the racist, town there in Arkansas that I drive by once in a while, and it's known, it was covered on the news and everything else, I'm like, yeah, sure are some nice people down here. They're bigots. It's what I'm saying is doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. If you're excluding other people, then you're a bigot. If you're saying, well, you only have value to me if you're, in the same preference group that I am. And that's a human thing. Like, we've actually not just seen human babies doing this. We've seen other primates. Are you kidding me? Primates, insects, goldfish, birds do this. We have an expression called birds of a feather flock together. What we often call racism is simply an in-group preference. And so I'm tolerant of that. I really am. It doesn't cause a boo-boo to me. It doesn't hurt me. But at the same time, there is a sense of justice, and it says, hey, this is America. So it's okay if you want to be, a KKK town. It's okay. I'm going to drive by your town and think, bigot. But there's some really nice people that live in that KKK town. Just as there are up in the Amish, just as there are in anywhere you go. And so, like I said, do we all have to be a melting pot? Do we all have to intermarry with each other's kids and stuff in order for us to be good? No, I'm not saying that. Maybe the goodness of America is that we are, in addition to being a melting pot, I saw the comment about, well, if you're not from America, you're not American. Please tell my wife that. Because she's not from America. And, oh, by the way, she's much darker skinned than me. Hint, hint. So, you know what? If you need to be a bigot, maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe that's part of the beauty of America is that we go, yeah. And this isn't just skin type and religion and in political ideology. I think one of the real telling things for me, I am a libertarian. And those who know libertarian know who Robert Nozick is. So he's the founder of the American libertarianism, and he's a reluctant. He didn't even want to found the damn party, and he wound up doing it, or the movement, and he wound up doing it. And he was interviewed in the 1990s, and they asked him, do you want to live in a libertarian utopia? And he said, hell no. Not with all those bigots. I mean, he said it. He said, look, you don't understand what a libertarian utopia is. A libertarian utopia allows for communism. It allows for capitalist greed. It says all of these things are fine as long as it's voluntary. And so maybe we should allow for bigotry here in America. It's not really hurting me, but there is a sense of justice that all bigotry has to be allowed.
Now, I'd say we do have that level of tolerance on a certain level. I mean, you can be a bigot. Most of us will look at you and go, you're an idiot, but long as your bigotry doesn't hurt anybody, long as you say you can't have that job doing X because you're from somewhere or you're different than me, you don't talk like me, we don't care. You can go home and hate people all you want. I'm kind of in the group. Most people suck, regardless of their race, color, or anything else. I'm equal opportunity. I hate everybody. We do that here in America. No one cares who you hate at home. You go home, you lock yourself in the house, and you sit there and listen to David Duke speeches all night long. You're an idiot. Go for it. Don't bother me. Don't care. The principle of BET bothers me in the fact that it says Black Entertainment Television because I see blacks only. Now, guess what? I don't watch it. Because I have a choice. I also don't watch the wrestling channel either. Why? I think it's moronically stupid. Okay. I used to watch the History Channel.
Hold on a minute now. Hold on a minute.
My choice, Bruce. So I don't have to watch it.
If I'm ever president, you're going to damn watch it.
They have their own channel. They can do their own thing. I used to watch the History Channel when it had history on it. It doesn't have history on it anymore. I don't watch it anymore. I have that choice when I go home. I watch what I want to watch.
I think we're discussing the future of the metaverse, and everyone just goes in their metaverse group. and
you go out
and that's where we live.
Hey,
I tell you right now, if there's some woke group out there that supports the WWF Wrestling Federation, I want to join right now, and I'm gonna start pushing that on all you guys because that is a sport and it's real, and they are athletes.
Sure they are. And a childhood.
I'll buy into that if you can let some 300-pound guy knee drop your Adam's apple and then you immediately get up and kick his ass.
Let me tell you what. All right, Les, you are teetering on being a transphobe because Macho Man was on South Park as a transsexual. So you better be very careful about choosing your words here, okay? Because you could get doxxed and outed and blacklisted this fast.
A little
All right,
disappointing that hasn't happened yet.
let me ask a question, because I feel like I didn't make myself sort of clear, and also we kept going over different things. What do you guys? How did I describe my position? How do you think you? If I were to ask you to describe what my position is, how would you describe it?
Michael, let me answer it super quick. We think of the absolute worst example we can of a woke leftist Marxist, and we overlay that on you.
I was going to say, it started like, honestly, Michael, it started like you started down a path, but I didn't see you go there. I'm just telling you, this is kind of where I thought you were going. White people can't be oppressed. The dominant party of any culture can't be,
See, I don't like to use the term, like, obviously there's the term white supremacy, right? And it is a real thing. I think what tends to happen is that in terms of, in order to like get people angry, right? There's like basically two things that the media use. It's fear and shame to basically like motivate people, right? Democrats tend to use shame, which isn't as strong of a motivator as fear, which I would say the right tends to use. But it's something that's been used in history. Chad's going to vehemently disagree with me on that. All right, a discussion for another
And
day.
fight.
And fight. But what the thing that I did pick up is that, yes, like we would all love for it where there's no groups. We're all just like living our lives, doing our thing, celebrating our culture, with our friends and family, and moving forth and this and that, right? And that, hey, there's not a Black History Month or an Irish History Month or a Jewish History Month or a National Women's Day or this and that. The reason why those things exist is because there is this lack of this type of education that occurs in our country, and it's and the purpose behind it is a positive one of enlightening people to other cultures. Some people don't want that. Okay, that's fine. I totally get that. Now that's in regards to the cultural discussion. Now back to doxing a long time ago in terms of what we're talking about segregation. I think what you're talking about is in terms of like policies in place. I guess I would think that you're referring to affirmative action, something like that, of in hiring practices, those types of things. Also, Bruce, I did mean to come back to the Supreme Court nominee. God, there's a lot to discuss here. So which one do we want to go back down on? Or does Chad want to blow me up?
Pick your rabbit hole, Michael.
Hit Doc's question.
Blue pill, red pill.
I'm about 4 of these in right now. I'm just feeling great.
Okay, I'll take Bruce's thing on the Supreme Court. I can understand how someone can interpret as reverse racism that the president comes out and says, "Oh, nope, you're shaking your head, Bruce."
I only shake my head with the term reverse racism. I love reverse racism. I love the opposite of racism. I don't like that term at all. It's either racist or it's not. And I want to just that's what I take. I've heard this term before, and I don't like it. If you're racist towards a person that's not Black, you're racist. Doesn't matter what color they are. If you're racist towards anybody, if you're racist towards an Asian, that's not reverse racism. That's just racism. If you're racist towards a white, that's just racism. So that's the only reason I shook my head.
Okay. Well, the term reverse racism, it's one that I feel is being used by white Americans that feel that these policies that have been put into place that, such as affirmative action, is trying to solve for the problem of racism against Blacks and making it racism against whites. So that's where I use that term from. Okay. But you are right in terms of, racism is racism. The reason why I don't have an issue necessarily with President Biden saying when he campaigned that if elected, that he would elect the first, and the vacancy were to happen on the Supreme Court, that he would elect a female African American jurist. I can understand how that could be interpreted as racist, because you're specifically saying, "Hey, I am targeting this group for hiring and no one else." All right. My argument is that the reason why it's not is because the Supreme Court for most of its existence has been white male Protestant, right? Okay. Which I think we would all agree is not a representative body of the American populace at large, right? Okay, Doc's kind of giving a whistle, but let's, for argument's sake, let me just finish this. All right. So this kind of goes back to where I was talking about, like, in terms of like institutions and having faith in those institutions. All right. If you're a female that has a case before the Supreme Court, if you're a minority that has a case before the Supreme Court, a minority female, whatever, okay, and you look at that panel that's deciding your case, and you see mostly white male Protestant, whatever, the reason why I bring religion is that's just the common demographic of the United States, then you're less likely to think that, one, their experiences, that there are some shared experiences there, and therefore may not necessarily see your case, right? It's just like, for example, like we wouldn't, as anyone who's a veteran of the military, you wouldn't expect someone to kind of like lecture you or have those shared experiences of what the military is and what it should be necessarily, even within the military, right? Like the infantry, you're in infantry, you have a non-infantry person telling you like, oh, this is how you should do infantry tactics or this and that. So that's where President Biden's goal is in terms of making a diverse Supreme Court where, obviously you're not going to please everyone, but see a representative body of the nation at large.
Let me take issue with what you're trying to sell, and let me tell you why I'm not buying it. Black Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population. There are 9 Supreme Court justices. 1 is already black. Multiple are already female. Why would you choose another black over an Asian? And if you're an Asian and you go before that Supreme Court juror panel, what are you to think when there's nobody there that looks like you?
Okay, you can make the argument that he should nominate an Asian jurist. Okay, that's fine.
Let me be clear.
But there is
my position is that gender should never come into it. Color should never come into it. You pick the best person for the job and let the chips lay where they fall. But on a more serious note, I've got family members that are black. I married into that, and I've been getting blown up. They want to know why our sex robots do not have a black representative.
Ooh, that is a good point there.
That's not fair, Bruce.
Hey, I call it like I see it, guys. If it burns, it burns.
I feel sidelined here.
Also, there's no chicks with dick sex robots on there. You got to have that.
It's an attachment. You just said that, Michael. There's something for everybody.
Here I was thinking like Asian, and you threw that in. Damn it, Michael.
We got to get multiple blacks before we can get any Asians, Doc. Just wait your turn.
And that is not the moral decay. That is like society going up. That is definitely an advancement of society, sex robots.
What you got, Chad? I see you got a link in here.
Well, I just want to go back to the comment Michael said about conservatives preferring fear. I I take issue with that because all we've heard over the media during the Trump administration was fascism was around the corner. Fascism is around the corner. Trump's a fascist. I've yet to hear anybody on the left describe to me what exactly he did that was fascistic. Still waiting.
So some things that concern me when Trump was running for office, and this also kind of speaks to the fear thing, is securing the border. And when he referred to, do we all agree that the definition of racist is labeling a group of people strictly by the color of their skin and not the individual, and applying that descriptor to all people?
That's such
They
a
also
great.
describe the fact that man's color of his skin is not the color of his soul.
That's a great question, Michael, and let me answer that.
Wasn't a question. Well, it was a question that's a yes, no, but all
well,
right.
I might say no, because let me real quickly tell you what my definition of racism is, because I've focused on this for a long time. And it's such a good point, because depending on what your definition of racism is, depends on whether something's deemed racist or not. And the term has been diluted way down from what it should be. When someone is actually labeled a racist, it should be a horrific label. It's not. I almost wear it as a badge of honor. It should be the exact opposite, but it's been diluted down to the point that people just throw racist out for anything. So let me tell you what my definition is, okay? My definition of racism is any time that you elevate or you lower one race of people below the others. And I leave it just at that. If you say, and it could be a factual statement. If you say blacks make better basketball players, it's a racist statement. Might it be factual? Maybe, but it's a racist statement. If you say whites are the master race, racist statement, we would all agree on that. That goes back to the old Nazi days, right? If you say Jews are good with money or stingy, or if you say Asians are great at math, racist statements. Now we can go back and we can do studies and determine whether they're factual or not, but I believe that you're elevating one race above others, or you're lowering one race above others on any of those comments. And therefore, it would be a racist statement.
I would take it a step further, and I would say anything less than that is not racist.
Anything less than what? I'm sorry.
What Bruce just said.
Bruce said a lot of stuff. He also talked about stereotyping and institutional racism. But
give us an example, Chad, because I'm listening. I'm learning here.
Yeah.
So what you just said was that elevating a race based on race alone, elevating just simply based on race is racism. I agree with that. And I would say, and take it a step further, and I would say that anything less than that is not racist. Because like you said, it's been diluted so much and it's been thrown around so much, especially by the left, that we don't even know what it means anymore.
Yeah. So there's, what Bruce described there, and Chad, you as well. I mean, you describe essentially institutional racism if you have an organization, a body, and one that elevates one race over another. And what, Chad? Why are you shaking your head?
Why is it institutional? Why can it not be just on an individual level as well? He was very vague in that definition. It applies individually as well.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. So the core part of what I was getting at with racism, right, or the definition of it, is labeling a group of people strictly based on the color of their skin, and if it's a negative connotation, whatnot, right? There could be some positive ones that, hey, some would have that, love that attribution, I guess, but essentially labeling them all as one group, all having the same characteristics and behavior. So we agree on that. So having said that, when Trump was talking about the border and Mexicans coming in illegally, or even Central Americans, he defined them all as, he used the term, they're all rapists and killers. That is a racist remark, right?
If he had said that.
He did say that.
He didn't say all.
In his announcement speech.
He never said all, and that's important.
He said
Okay.
some, I suppose, are good people. So he's basically implying everybody.
And
I gotta
I
give
would
Micah
take it a
that
step
one.
further. I would take it a step further. That is not a race. That is nationalist, and those are different.
Mexicans are a nationality. The Latin, you can call it Latin group, whichever. I mean, you're kind of parsing hairs there. But my point being is that
I agree. I am, and it may have, and I see where it was taken that way. It wasn't well said, but I think that the intention is different from what you are trying to make it out to be. Obviously, some people will say one thing, some people will say the other. It wasn't well said. I agree. But to point out certain nations are doing certain things doesn't necessarily equate race. So I'm going to go off topic just for a quick second. Someone had said something about anchor babies, Mexican coming over, having a baby. What do we think about that? I think about that the exact same thing as a white person coming over, a person from any country, a Chinese person coming over, a person from Australia doing the same thing. Like it's not the nationality of the person coming over doing it. That's the problem. It's that the person is coming over and doing it. So I think that was the thing. If we didn't have Mexicans and South Americans crossing the border in droves, and instead we had Czechoslovakians, I imagine Trump's speech would have been about Czechoslovakians. I could be wrong, but that's why I'm saying I don't believe it was a racist statement, but more of that of nationalism.
Well, and there's that aspect of nationalism in terms of there can be a fine line between pride in country, right, which we all have, versus a nativist approach of I don't want any foreigners in here, and sort of xenophobic talk, which Trump has a history of making. And I find it abhorrent, like Afghan and Iraqi translators that helped us out, and putting a limit in terms of people trying to come to this country, freezing the visa application process. Those are the things that I saw that, Chad, to answer your question, that troubled me.
So here's where I have a problem, because if I were to go down to Mexico, they would arrest me for crossing their border illegally. So are they racist for arresting a white person when they're enforcing their border laws?
Clearly,
the answer is no.
That's not the argument.
The answer is no, it's not. We have laws on the books that we need to enforce. Did Trump halt legal immigration any? That's my question. That would refute your entire argument. If he stopped Mexicans from coming over here legally, as he likes to say, then what's the problem? We have laws on the books that we need to enforce. Every other country does it. Why is it racist when America does it?
I didn't say that enforcing our immigration laws was racist. We do have those laws in the book. The issue that I took was the language that he used to describe the people that are coming over. That's where I have the issue. And if he really wanted to, if he really like understood, like cared for like what these people are going through that are coming over, that are seeking a better life, seeking the American dream, right? That aside from building up the border and making it stronger, which Obama was for, Biden was for, or is for, and as well as Trump. But the other aspect is make the visa process easier. Have it where our embassies are open, where we can make it where people come over. I'm glad we're all on approval.
Listen. Listen. Our government is the absolute worst solution to any problem ever. Whenever I hear somebody go, our government needs to do this, I'm like, really? We're at that point that we can't put a fifth graders class together to come up with a solution for this. Instead, we have to get the government involved. They're horrible at everything they do. They can fuck up anything.
Everything. The GI Bill was one of the single best investments in the American
Okay, you can count everything good they did on one hand. Okay.
If you gave the GI Bill to a group of fifth graders, they would come up with better benefits for you guys than the federal government has. And that's my point. I don't think that the government is the solution to any of this. I think it could be better done anywhere. And in terms, and so I absolutely agree. Bringing people in through immigration visas, it's an absolute disaster, and it could be done better. We don't need to have the government doing it. We need to have some other organization doing it that can make it better, can make it more efficient. How many years has the government had to fix the visa situation and immigration situation in this country? It probably started about the time we signed the Declaration of Independence. Now, I want to get the opinion of this from another person who's been struggling with his gender. Go ahead, Brent.
All right. I just want to say that the immigration discussion has nothing to do with race, because there's precedence for this, guys. The immigration debate has gone all the way back to the founding of this country. You know, look at like the Irish immigration. What was that like movie, Gangs of New York? Like, I mean, this has been going on for centuries, right? Or not.
I feel
centuries,
that movie proves the opposite of your point. That movie was the main character in that by
immigration. Hold on. I've had my mouth shut for like an hour. So immigration debate has been going on since the founding of this country, right? It's the 200 something years that this country has been in existence. It's for one, different group or another. Okay. How I know it doesn't have nothing to do with race, because look at South Texas. You have cities and counties in South Texas that are predominantly Hispanic, that have been reliably blue voting areas. They're now voting Republicans in. Why is that? Because they're getting overwhelmed with migrants who are also predominantly Hispanic. Okay. This country has got so many resources. We're doing so well that people from all over the world are trying to rush here, regardless of age, sex, orientation, all that garbage. Okay. They're coming here because they want what we've built. The problem is, if you have an influx of too many people, it's not going to be good. All right. We're going to turn into a third world country. So nobody's against immigration. Everybody's for legal immigration. We can't have an influx of illegal immigration, because then we can't control the numbers in our country, and we're not going to be a country anymore.
Ooh, wow, you hit on quite a few topics. So I would say that history disproves like your conclusion that you came to, that we wouldn't be a country anymore, because as you said, I mean, throughout the history of the United States, first is the Irish, and of course everyone looked down upon the Irish. They were treated as third-class citizens, no good. Irish came, they worked hard, they got into, different jobs, worked their way up, and then you have the Chinese influx. Then you have Eastern European Jews come in and settle. You had Italian immigration. Every single one of these groups was the poorest of the poor that came over, and they worked hard, they made a life for themselves, and they succeeded. I don't find that any different with any of these other groups that are coming in. And what tends to happen is that we actually need this influx of immigrants, and they actually boost the economy because they are doing the jobs that most other native-born Americans within 1 or 2 generations wouldn't do, and don't do. There's also a factor that is in terms of studies that show of immigrants, it's called like the immigrant factor, the migrant factor, is that when you take a person that is willing to pick up everything that they have and pack it in a suitcase and walk thousands of miles to try to get to this country, this isn't someone that's lazy. This isn't someone that's looking for a handout. This is someone that is trying to better their lives, and more importantly, better their children's lives. I mean, there's, in Honduras has one of the highest capital murder rates of any nation, right? You can't keep their children safe.
Well, let me ask you this, Michael, real quick. if communist China and Russia were to team up and somehow invade the United States, are they going to stay and fight, or are they going to flee? Those people you're talking about.
Brent, well, I'll answer your question with a question. I know that I've come across more than one non-U.S. citizen in military uniform. Have you?
That's a very small percentage of the U.S. military. Very small percentage.
It is a percentage. They're in there. I don't know what would give you cause for concern as to why they wouldn't.
Well, what I'm getting at is, where does their loyalty fall?
Why are you questioning their loyalty? No one questioned.
Because
We're all immigrants in this country.
Country legally. They came in illegally. We have a system.
They won't learn our language.
Well, we have a legal system how they become citizens of the United States, and they said, nope, not doing that.
No, I believe that the reasons as to why they didn't go through those avenues is because, like I mentioned in my example before, is like in place like Honduras, where the murder capital rate is at its highest, is that, are you going to, people are dying all around you. You can't keep your family members safe, and you maybe have a 2-year waiting process to get that visa to come in. Are you going to wait those 2 years knowing that people are dying around you, or are you just going to do what you need to do to get to a safer place? That's what I think. That's what it is in my opinion.
Oh, okay, so Mexico isn't safer. El Salvador isn't safer. Nicaragua isn't safer. Panama isn't safer. Belize isn't safer. Come on, Michael. They're not
Doc,
going.
What's the problem? You just said this is the greatest nation in the world. Why would you?
Yeah, right. So that's just.
Why would people not want to come in?
I half agree with you. And I mean, and I do believe, just so we're clear, I believe that America's greatest natural resource is immigration, and that we need to vastly increase it. So I'm there with you, Michael. But at the same time, I want to vet these people. As Brent said, the fact that they broke into this country illegally already puts me at odds with them. But then also this thing about, the Syrians just want to escape war. Well, Jordan is right there. Lebanon is right there. Turkey is right there. What? There's all these countries. Oh, no, I don't want to escape. I need to escape to Germany. Oh,
Doc, if you want to talk about moral decay, all right, and if you want to talk about, doing what's right, then someone who wants to do what's right doesn't ask that type of question. You just let them in. You help them out.
No, I worked for USAID. No, Michael, I worked for USAID for 4 years. USAID, we went and we did all the humanitarian crisis and everything else. One of the things that absolutely stunned me, and I just never thought I would see this, they have whole entire groups that study borders and the flux of people and what they advocate. What USAID, what the federal government tells the rest of the world is, if you want to keep control of your natural resources and you don't want to be overwhelmed, then you must have proper immigration services. You must have proper immigration channels. Look, it's not just about disease and crime. It's also about what each one of these nations can manage. We say natural resources. It's not just a number of trees and the oil in the ground. It's also your ability to manage it. So your manpower and your capacity. So we've seen in USAID, we've seen immigration absolutely, because let's say of a natural disaster or whatever it is, complex disaster, man-made disaster, we've seen it absolutely spread to another country and just devastate that country, put them into the same category of catastrophe as their neighbor. And that all happened through immigration. Immigration has to be controlled. It has to be regulated.
Yeah. Again, I'm not advocating for the dissolution of immigration law, right? I've said from the beginning is that we need to have a more robust system in place. I haven't heard anyone from the right, and also probably from the left as well, saying like, hey, let's put more money into our asylum courts, right? Because essentially what happens is that someone makes it over, makes it onto this land, let's say crossing from Cuba or something like that, claim political asylum. There's a 2-year waiting list to get your trial heard. And like I said, let's put that money into vetting and security checks and this and that. I totally I totally am for that. I have no problem with that. However, just like Europe is doing right now with Ukrainian refugees, they're not asking for the paperwork up front. They're saying, hey, we're going to let them in because there's a crisis and we'll figure it out after the fact. And that to me is the humanitarian response that we should have.
Well, Michael, typically when you ask me as a conservative, let's put more money into, I'm out. Okay. I don't want to put more of my money into nothing. I put too much of my money into it already. Let me keep more of my money. I will ask you, what programs are we getting rid of to be able to reappropriate those existing funds to immigration? And at that point, when you tell me I got 5 government programs that are outdated, we're getting rid of, we're going to give you half of your money back and we're going to take the other half and we're going to put it to dealing with immigration problems, I'm on board. I'm listening to what you're saying, brother.
Oh, I'm sure we can find something to cut from the federal budget.
I have no doubt that we can find trillions to cut. Okay. That's where you and I agree. I want to go. I don't want to go in there with a scaffold. I want to go in there with a double-bladed axe. Let's chop them out. Let's hack them out. And we'll find some money for immigration issues.
Yeah. Start with the Air Force. Don't really need them.
Can't argue with you there.
We got 4.3 acres we can put anywhere on the planet.
Well, hey guys, we're at the 2-hour mark, so I think we'll probably talk this to death.
Kick Michael off this call, Brent.
What's that?
Michael's goofy ass is still smiling. Oh man, getting so much love here.
We got to have you on. I saw one person that said they're gonna stop watching until you're gone. I guess they just want to see an echo chamber, but
I'm like a Howard Stern for like conservatives or something. The people that he pisses off most are the ones that listen to him.
Michael, you know what this is? This is the conservative view here. We got our token lefty.
Who's that dipshit on when Haney first started? Haney and Combs. Yeah. I'm not as ugly as that dumb fuck, but
well, thank God you're here, because for the longest time they kept telling me I was a liberal. I'm like, I think, guys, I think I'm a centrist. But now that Michael's here, they can finally see that.
Yeah, Michael, our biggest argument before you, Michael, was which sex robot we wanted. And you guys know which one I wanted, the little Mexican.
With
there she is, number 4. Look at that gap. Lord.
That's the fisting model. Are we still recording?
Please no.
Hey, Michael, I want you to know that Combs is dead. So
good.
You are very unsensitive. So
it's insensitive. Go back to school. No, okay.
All right, guys, let's go around the horn. Let's wrap this up. So please address the theme of the night, which is America in decline? So go around the horn, start with Les. You got it, brother.
Well, at the beginning of this show, I said we're in a rough patch, but we'll pull through like we always do. Nothing said here tonight makes me change my mind. You know, America is the greatest nation on earth because we can pull our heads out of our asses. It sometimes takes a lot to get us to do it, but we can do it.
Yeah, I'm not so optimistic. I don't think America's really seeing anything on the level that it's seeing right now. I hope I'm wrong. Les, I hope you're right. Some of the things we need to do, we need to take our language back. We need to purge American language of the Marxist power dynamics. You know, they changed the definition of racism. You know, leftists say black people can't be racist because they hold no power. They redefine everything in terms of oppressed and oppressor. And James Lindsay, who I've mentioned here before, he started a business. It's called New Discourses. If you go on YouTube, check out some of his speeches. Wonderful order. He's making a woke dictionary. You know, he says communists, they share your language, but they don't share your dictionary, meaning they have different meanings for all these terms. So, you know, we need to reject collectivism at all levels. Collectivism kills. That was the point of Ayn Rand, who I'm a huge fan of. Doc, I'd like to get your opinion later on Ayn Rand, since you're a libertarian, but we'll hash that out once we're done here. But yeah, so I've also got something big coming up. After reading Bray's book on Antifa, I want to answer that age-old question: is fascism and National Socialism a left-wing or right-wing movement? So to answer this, I put my dissertation research on hold, and I've dived headfirst in political science and fascist literature, which is mind-numbing. It's about as bad as communist literature, and I'm going to be writing a manuscript on the subject, though it probably won't be published in any academic journal because I'm arguing that fascism is very much on the left, and the academic journals are too, and they're not going to appreciate that. So I'm going to be looking to attempt to define left-wing and right-wing by tracing patterns across history since the French Revolution, then viewing fascist Italy and Nazi Germany through that lens. So if any of you are viewing or interested in a good book on German National Socialism, I'm gonna get my book quotes in here. Sorry about that. Hitler's National Socialism. It's been a very eye-opening. For those of you who don't understand what National Socialism, what Nazism entails, this is a great book on it. It's a scholarly work. It's written by a PhD. There's another one that I've got called Mussolini's Intellectuals. Another good one. So for those of you out there interested in such things, but that's going to be my neck of the woods for a little while. So.
All right, is America in decline? I can see where people can argue that it is. I can see we point out some points where obviously it's not. Medical technology, for example, our food availability, housing, things of that nature that keep us alive and let us live longer. But is America in decline? Yeah, in some ways it is. But whose fault is it? It's our own fault. We can only look at ourselves because we are such a tolerant country that we allow people who aren't sure even what they are to thrive. People who through normal means in any other country would have been killed or died off, left alone to starve. We lift them up and we get them the care that they need. And we ensure that they're able to survive in this country, and not just survive, but the pendulum has swung so far that we allow some of those people that have crazy views completely outside of the norm to not only have those views and not be punished for having those views or penalized for having those views, but to imagine that their views are mainstream and to take over our televisions and our children's schools and to perpetuate those views to the point that we're in a situation in this country, we're not sure of wokeism, that we have kids that believe that some of these views are actually accurate and are actually true. That's a very dangerous thing. Because as I've said before, the pendulum will eventually swing the other way. When it does, it's very, very ugly for people with extreme and minority views. It happens in every country. It'll happen in this country. I hope it doesn't happen in my lifetime or in my children's lifetime, but it's a coming.
I just saw a comment saying it's the sex robots' fault and they're ruining the country, and that is not fair at all. That's absolutely the opposite of what's going on in this country. Sex robots are going to save us all, and that's communist thought. And as a devout anti-Marxist, I have to call that to the floor. So the way of the future is sex robots for everyone. Is America in decline? No, it isn't. I'd say exactly the opposite. And one of the metrics that you can use, and there are many, but one of them is what we've discussed here at some length tonight, and that's just immigration alone. How many people want to get in is a fair indicator. And of course, that's a relative point, isn't it? Like, it could change tomorrow that some other country becomes more libertarian and more, more accepting. And so people migrate there more readily than they would to the United States. But certainly as of today, if we use that one metric, and we can use many metrics, no, America's not in decline. We are advancing, and this is a wonderful place to be. For us, frankly, the bigger problem has been inclusivity, and it really is. We want to, I think all along, there has been a movement since the Declaration of Independence for us to include more and more people, more and more identities, more and more groups. we'd hope that by including them, they work together and they begin to melt together. Their children marry each other and all of that. And we've seen success, wonderful success in this. But there is also that tendency for that in-group preference, whether you're this religion or this gender or that gender, or, you know, whatever, this nationality or ethnic group and this ethnic, you know, I mean, you still go to Chicago, New York, and LA, you see little Italy, you know, Chinatown, you see Greek town, there's that in-group preference. And so I think both are acceptable, whether we're a melting pot or the salad bowl, both are acceptable. The question then becomes, and the challenge, I should say, then becomes, do we remain in our echo chambers? Because in a melting pot, it's hard to do that. But in our tiny little enclaves all over America, we do stay in our echo chambers. And maybe that's not the end of the world. Maybe that's not the end of America. But of course, the duty then is to respect. And I don't mean respect like agree, but I mean to respect, to tolerate the other communities. This is our challenge in America. And it makes us take a very dim view of what's going on in America today. Maybe we're wise to do so. Maybe we should be good stalwarts and, you know, the watchdogs of our political and social, you know, organizations. That's perfectly fine. But I think this is where we struggle, and sometimes it gives us a very negative look about ourselves. And that's kind of my bottom line.
I want to say that again, I've enjoyed this conversation. It's great. It's great that we're having it, and the chat. Oh my God, you guys are just doing a phenomenal job of the roasting. Always here for the comments. I think, you know, I want to this conversation is just, it's an ongoing thing, right? It's not going to end. We're always going to talk about how we can improve this country, where some of us think we should improve, where others should improve, and let's have those conversations. You know, what I like to see is just that everyone, you know, those who work for it and want to improve their lives and do better, we need to be able to give them the opportunity to do so. I'm not saying, you know, handouts are deserved or, you know, necessarily like a deserved outcome. I'm just saying, like, hey, let's give the opportunity to those who want it. And so with that, it's, yeah, I think that America can do great things, and it's because of our immigrant culture and our acceptance from others, from other cultures, that makes us great. We had a discussion here in terms of where's the border between hanging out with your own culture group and versus, or does that turn into bigotry and racism? So I think that's a conversation to be had further. I don't think we delve deep enough into that, but like I said, I hope Brent will keep having me on, and we'll have those discussions.
Yeah, man, I'll keep inviting you back because I love reading those comments too. Hey, in all seriousness, guys, my hat off to Michael. Obviously, he brings a counterpoint to a lot of our discussion, and the hate he gets in the comment section is awesome sometimes. I saw one Michael saying that they were done. They need you to come clean up after them. So
as long as it's with my tongue.
Oh God, it's disgusting. Oh, I think you confirmed a lot of suspicions in the comments.
Don't kink shame me, chat.
Oh, anyways, guys, is America in decline? I think there's a lot of things that are heading that way. However, like Bruce said earlier, the pendulum swings back and forth, and we're not at the point where we can bounce back, and we have over the course of our short history. I think on a lot of aspects we're going in the wrong direction. I've talked about, you know, some of the things that have been introduced in the U.S. military that essentially being forced down the throats of the U.S. military that affects combat effectiveness. and that's directly social pressures, right? In terms of the U.S. military, the only question should be asked is, does this increase our lethality on the battlefield? If the answer is yes, then let's absolutely incorporate it. If it's no, well, then we have no business introducing that into the U.S. military. In terms of the country's morals, I think there's a lot of things that are very scary. One of those things is the stuff that we've seen over the last couple of years involving race, which we've discussed significantly on tonight's live stream. But, you know, we're also seeing the pendulum swing back, right? Some of the things that came of that have led to American cities being destroyed, crime rising astronomically, and it's starting to come back, right? We're starting to see even the people that were calling for those ridiculous reforms are now going the opposite direction. So, like Bruce said earlier, the pendulum seems to be swinging back. So I haven't lost faith, guys. This is definitely still the greatest country in the world, in my opinion. That's why we have millions of people trying to come here to live. Okay, they need to come here legally, obviously. But that's why we have folks from all over the world trying to move here specifically, okay? People from Africa, people from South America, all right? If this is the racist nation that some of these morons are claiming it to be, you wouldn't have those individuals trying to flood here in droves, okay? That's all I got, fellas. Does anybody have any saved rounds? No?
Fuck Trudeau.
Say it in French, Chad.
Hey,
Say it in
Chad, could you
French.
elaborate? I'm a little unclear on your position.
Yeah, why don't you have Let's Go Brandon behind you too?
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Our American president doesn't rate Chad.
That'll be my next purchase, promised.
Awesome.
Equal insulting.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Night.
Cheers.